Hello, everyone. Do I have the mic positioned well? Can everyone hear me? Is it working well with the Zoom? Thumbs up. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. So my name is Katy Bensen. I am the program manager for Money Sense at Opportunities Credit Union. And so I do financial literacy workshops like this and also one-on-one counseling. And so high school is kind of a time when people tend to move out of their family household, start taking on finances of their own, and start planning for sort of more long-term life goals. So I want to introduce a couple of concepts for you. And I think I have some poll questions that we can start with. Yeah. Is that only going up on the Zoom? Okay. Do you have a copy of that? Because I did not write it down. Okay, cool. Great. So which of the following best describes you? Are you a student, parent or guardian, adult learner, or college and career access professional? So students, cool. Parents, guardians, cool. Adult learners, great. And any other college career access professionals? We hear from this group. Cool. Okay. Can I actually keep looking at that for a second? Fantastic. Okay. And then will this show me how the next, like how people answer? Okay, cool. Fantastic. This is very cool. Yeah, never mind. All right. Then I am going to also ask some questions about your financial situation. So if you're comfortable answering, that's great. If you're not, totally understandable. But I want to introduce this concept of financial wellness. So having control of your finances doesn't just mean restricting them and not spending on frivolous purchases or not going out with your friends. It means having a lower stress around money, knowing that you can afford the things that you need and weather emergencies that are coming, and also meet your goals, whatever those might be financially. So we're going to go over how we spend money, and then what happens when you can't spend money and having to borrow it. But the other side of borrowing, of course, then is debt and how we pay it back. So the most basics of budgeting is just managing your cash flow and making sure that the money that's coming in, we'll call our income, is balanced with the money that's going out, which is expenses. For many people, they get into situations where this is out of balance and the expenses are higher than the income. But it's a two-way street. We can look at how we can increase our income and how we can decrease our expenses. But to do that, you really have to know what's going on. So who here has had a budget before, has made a budget? A few people, cool. How was it? Was it super fun and easy to stick to? Was it kind of hard and restrictive and there were things you didn't realize you were spending money on? A lot of people struggle with writing a budget because it's hard to keep. Are we hearing someone else's thing as well, or is that just from next door? Okay. It's hard to keep track of what your spending is if you're not writing it down or recording it in some way. There are lots of different ways you can longhand keep track of your finances. Google Sheets and Excel both have built-in functions for budgets. And there are now just a ton of apps you can use online. Have you guys heard of any sort of online budgeting tools? Maybe like, which ones have you heard of? Mint, yeah, that's cool. Mint is great. I think it's the #1 free budgeting tool. But part of being a free tool means that it has some ads in it, right? It tells you suggestions that are suggestions with their partners. If you end up in college and you're a student, you can get free access to YNAB, which is You Need a Budget, which I think is one of the most comprehensive budgeting tools. If you are not a student, you have to pay for it, which is not awesome. And the most important thing when you make your budget is to find that it is balanced, but it's also going to end up being really, really personal. What my expenses are going to be different than your expenses, and the things that are important to you are going to be different than what I would spend my money on, right? So you can't just take a budget from the internet. You really have to spend time getting to know yourself, your needs, and your kind of long-term desires. So I have some examples of some saving goals on here, right? Because it's not just about balancing our month, it's also about making sure that we have the money to do some of these more long-term things. Is anyone saving up for something right now? Yeah, what are you saving up for? Going to what? Ah, a wedding, cool, great. Who else? Yeah, what are you saving up for? College, yeah. And do you guys know how much those are, the things you're saving up for? Do you have like a specific number? Just kind of in general? Yeah. So the last one on here, right, is an emergency fund. An emergency fund is a little bit different than the rest of these. Do you guys know, does anyone have an idea of why it might be a little different? Trying to keep people engaged, but so with all of these, you would have a certain amount you're saving up for. You have maybe an event, a wedding, or college where you know how much it's going to be. Once you go to that event, once you're out of school, you don't need to be saving for it anymore. It ends. With a emergency fund, you want to keep a balance in there at all times for emergencies. And so I'm actually going to skip one slide ahead, because the general advice for how much to keep in your emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of expenses. This can get really high if you're like in a household where there's a few different people, you have a lot of expenses, and it might be too low for other people as well who don't have very many expenses. So again, this is going to be something that's personal to you. What makes you feel secure knowing that you have these funds on hand for what comes up? What might an unexpected emergency be that someone can think of? Or has anyone had an unexpected emergency? Car repairs, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like your fridge breaking. Yeah. We said cars, vet bills can be a big one. Our own personal medical bills. A couple years ago, totally without like reason, like I wasn't doing anything fun. I broke my foot in my house, like on my stairs, you know, not doing anything at all interesting. And even with insurance, it was like $2,000, right, out of pocket. And because I had an emergency fund, I was able to cover that. Whereas if I had not had that money on hand, I would have really struggled to pay those medical bills. So with an emergency fund, it goes down and then you fill it back up again. Now we're going to do, we have a few polls and a few questions. We're going to do a quick would you rather little game. So we're kind of going to say that everything evens out, right? So would you rather live in a city where you're paying more for your rent? So you can't afford a car payment, but you can bike to get around because it's a, you know, cliff city. Sorry. Or would you rather live in the suburbs where you have to drive to get places, but because the rent's cheaper, you can afford a car? What do you guys think? Who's a city person? Okay, not very many. Who's gonna go in the suburbs and have a car? Yeah, that's cool. All right. The next one is going to be, would you rather go out to lunch or go see a movie in a theater? So who's going to be on team lunch? Okay, who's going to go see a movie in a theater? Wow, what's everyone else doing? That's not doing either of them. Okay, would you rather, this is getting a little more expensive now, right? Would you rather get a new phone or go to a music festival, right? So this is a few $100s, kind of a big purchase. So who's getting a new phone? Okay. Who's going to the music festival? Okay. What else would you spend if you had, let's say, $500? What else might you spend that $500 on? Yeah, books. Okay, cool. Anyone else have something that they would really like to prioritize? A computer. Yeah, those are great ones. And then the last option here is bringing in a new idea, which is frequency, right? So these other purchases are one-time purchases. Let's compare getting a coffee, Dunkin' Donuts every morning for a month. Okay, so I'm calling this about $60 to get your coffee every day for a month versus buying a new video game, right? For most console games, it's $60. So who's going to go for coffee every morning for a month? Yeah. Who's going to get a video game? Okay. Let's see. What then happens if you aren't able to prioritize that and you are getting your coffee and the video game and a new phone and going to music festival and you end up spending more money than you have in your account? We have something called an overdraft or non-sufficient funds. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty financial money movement that goes on with banking nowadays because it is largely digital. So it can be hard to know where your money actually is at a particular given time. You might look at your account and see that you have a certain balance, but some of that money is already set up to move out of your account for a previous purchase or for an upcoming reoccurring purchase you have. So it can be really easy to overdraft if you're not paying attention to your actual spending. So when you overdraft, it means that you are making a purchase beyond what you have in your account, but the purchase goes through. So you are essentially borrowing money from your financial institution, and there's usually a pretty hefty fee with this. It will also make you go negative in your account. And most institutions have a fee for being negative either daily or once. So it can really, really rack up. There's also the option of non-sufficient fund, non-sufficient funds activity, which is the same idea. You're trying to access funds that you do not have in your account, but in this case, it does not go through. However, they still charge you a fee. So you still really need to know what's going on in your account. So let's say we're doing great with this. We're kind of looking at our budget, figuring out where we want to be spending money, where we are spending money. And it turns out that where you want to be spending money does not line up with where you are spending money. How can we modify our expenses? These are a few kind of general rules that I like that help people connect with their spending more. So planning ahead can give you a lot more space to make sure that you actually want the purchase and gives you space to get better deals on it, to shop around. An example that I've been thinking about recently is like winter boots, right? It's March now. Hopefully we have spring soon. And maybe you might be finding that your shoes are just like not cutting it really well this year. Now is a great time to be looking at new winter boots, as opposed to if you wait until, say, October, November of this year, when you put your old winter boots on and realize that they're not cutting it, they're not waterproof, they're not warm enough, and you then have to make a more immediate purchase, you're more likely to end up paying full price and to not be getting the best deal you can be, right? So planning ahead, shopping around, and then another concept here is creating distance, which is a little bit different. So I want to kind of bring us back to impulse spending. So has anyone gone to a store, you have a plan, you might have your grocery list, your shopping list, but when you leave, you've spent twice as much money. You have a ton of other things. Yeah. Maybe we go to Target, I feel like is such a bad store for this, right? Or even if you're online shopping and it's so easy to just add more things on because I mean, marketing is one of the biggest businesses in the world, right? And so there is constant pressure on us to make purchases that we don't know we need, which means you don't really need them, right? So if you can create distance between that moment when you see something that you think you need to when you actually make a purchase, it gives you space to get out of the impulse, out of the kind of pressure that the marketing is putting on you. It can also lead to better ability to shop around because if you're like online shopping, you can put things in your cart. And if you just close your cart, they'll send you an email that's like, you can get 10% off. Come back. You forgot this in your cart. You've seen that. Yeah. Something that I like to do is when I see something that I like that I wasn't planning on buying, I'll take a picture on my phone. And then the next time I'm going shopping, beforehand, I'll like look through those pictures and see like, am I still thinking about that at all? And a lot of times the answer is no, right? Oh, hello. Okay, great. So this is a big stage for those of you who said you're students thinking about where you want to be in 5 years or in 10 years and thinking about the financial costs of getting there. Have you thought about this before? Those of you who are kind of starting out, if you're thinking about college, do you know how much your degree will cost? It can be really, scary to confront how expensive something like that will be. But if you're able to start now and start planning, you have a lot more opportunities to get more out of your savings. So have you heard about the Vermont 529 plan? Yeah, cool. So VSAC operates it here in Vermont, and it's a great way to save up for college for yourself or for your family. It can be used for any kind of a higher education. And like a retirement or a health savings account, it's tax advantaged, which means you don't pay as much taxes on it. You either pay it going in or going out, not both. And these are great ways to sort of save up long-term for future things you want. Interest earning accounts are a little bit different. So tax advantage, you save money because you're not paying taxes on it. Interest earning, you are gaining money on the money that you're putting in. So I'm sure you guys have heard about like investing, stocks, bonds, that sort of thing. These have the highest rates of return in that. So the money you put in, you have the highest option of earning more money on it, but they also are more risky and they're much less accessible. So if you have money in stocks, invested in stocks, and you need a car repair, you're not going to want to use that money, right? You're going to want to use money that's maybe in a high interest savings account where you're getting a little bit more back than on your normal checking account, but it's still really accessible. In general, you're going to find that the more accessible things are, the less interest you're getting on it. So I'm going to move on to credit, but does anyone have sort of quick questions on budget or anything like that? The last page on your handout has kind of a sample budget for you to think about. You can either do it now, or if you're looking into moving out of your family household, thinking about what your budget might look like when you have your own place, when you have your own apartment, or when you're in college. So credit is a really credit is like very integral to your overall financial success because most people are not able to do the long-term, larger financial goals that they have without using credit in some way. So I'm talking about like buying a house, going to college, going to graduate school, getting a car. Those things are almost always more money than you have on hand. So you end up needing to borrow money. To borrow money, you need to have a credit history and a good credit score. So a credit score is like a risk rating for lenders to see how likely someone is or is not to pay back their loans. But it's not just lenders who are going to be looking at your credit score. And this is a really tricky situation because I know people who grew up kind of thinking like, I really don't want to be in debt. I don't want to take on loans that I don't need. I have friends who, saved up and bought a car completely in cash, didn't take out an auto loan, but now in their late 20s are looking to rent an apartment and have no credit history, and their landlord does credit checks. And one thing about your credit score is if you have no credit history, it's the same thing as having bad credit history. It's not like you're just penalized, it starts at zero. So it's really good to kind of pay attention to your credit, even if you're not planning on making a super large, getting a super large loan in the near future, just to know that there's nothing finicky going on there. And in case you're looking to get an apartment or with employers, the main sectors that will look at your credit report are finance, security, and military, right? Careers. But I don't want to scare you too much. Your credit score, the exact number isn't super important. It goes from 300 to 850. There are a few different scoring models. There's different credit bureaus. Your exact credit score is really like, it doesn't exist until someone pulls it. And it's going to vary depending on who's pulling it and why. And that's totally fine, totally normal. You probably have like, a potential of like over 6 credit scores at any given time. What's really important is that you're in the band you need to be in. This is an example. Not all lenders will use this because, so for instance, this is saying that 800 to 850 is excellent. I work at a credit union, and after, I think it's 740, there is no change in interest rate. So if you have a 740 and you get a car loan, you're getting the same interest rate as someone with an 820, right? So making up that extra bit of having a better credit score has no actual tangible benefit to you. And I see a lot of people get really wrapped up in their credit score in the specific number. And having good credit is not the same thing as having good financial health. Because someone who has really high credit card debt, for instance, might have a really great credit score because they pay on time, they have a lot of cards, but they have $60,000 in credit card debt. And so they're definitely not in a great financial situation, even though they might have an 800 credit score. Similarly, I might work with someone who's never had a loan before, has a great emergency savings account, is saving up for the things that they need. But if we pull their credit, it looks terrible. Right? So it's important to kind of balance it out, make sure you understand what's going on, but don't stress about your credit score. You can check your credit report on annualcreditreport.com. This is guaranteed by the federal government that you can annually get your credit report once a year. I really recommend doing it, even if you're not looking at a loan. When people talk about identity theft, they're talking about kind of stealing your credit history. Right. And so getting, for instance, like your social security number, date of birth, someone could use your name and identity to take out a loan that you wouldn't necessarily know about. So it's really good to be checking that, even if you're not looking at loans. Some lenders and financial institutions, so I have a credit card, and my credit card company does like credit monitoring for me as part of that. And then there are also credit monitoring apps. So have you guys heard of like Credit Karma? Yeah, Credit Sesame, all of those. Experian has one as well, Boost, I think. And they can be really, really great because they do offer like good advice. But like I mentioned with Mint, If the product is free for you, you are part of the product. So there's a lot of advertising, and they might say something like, hey, you can improve your credit score by doing this with our partner. And it's true that whatever they're recommending might improve your credit score, but you don't have to do it with their partner. So these are kind of the main things that go into your credit score. It's a very complicated and unpredictable algorithm. But in general, the most important thing is that you're making on-time payments on loans that you have. The next one here, credit utilization, a little bit less obvious, but that is on like a credit card. If you have a credit limit, right? So with a credit card, you're borrowing and repaying up to a certain amount. Whereas like with what's called an installment loan, like a car loan or student loan, you're paying a certain amount every month and everything stays the same. The credit card, all that information changes month to month. So if your credit card is, your limit's like $1,000 and you have that maxed out at like $999, that's really going to hurt your credit score. Because it brings up questions for the lender, for the credit bureau of like, you know, can they pay this back? Is this, you know, would you want to make a loan to someone who's kind of maxed out all of their other options? It brings into question your financial situation. So if you can keep your credit utilization low, it really helps your credit. And then the other ones here are less important, as you can just see, like even visually, they don't make up as much. The longer your credit history is, the better. If you have a nice mix of things, it's better. And then the last one here is inquiries. And so that is an application for credit. So if you apply for a loan and then you check your credit score like the next week, it's going to be lower than when you made that application because you've already asked for money. And so if you ask someone for money and then you go to another person right away and ask them for money again, it's again a little bit of this red flag for a lender that can this person pay back the money that they're trying to borrow. That said, a small caveat to that is if you are applying for the same loan at multiple places, like a car loan or home loan or whatever like that, and you do it like the same week, the algorithm knows that you're not trying to buy like 6 cars. You're just looking to rate shop and see who can get you the best deal. And that's totally fine. I really encourage, if you get like a bigger loan like that, to apply a few places and see what one's best for you. When you are working on improving your credit, the most important thing, like I said, is making on-time payments, keeping your credit card balance low. And for those of you who are younger, who might not have had any debt before, you can look at credit building products like a secure credit card and a credit building loan. So these are considered low risk for lenders. So they'll do them for people who have no history, bad history, whatever. A secure credit card, you make a deposit, like a security deposit on an apartment. And if you don't pay your credit card, they'll use that, right? And then with a tracker loan or a credit builder loan, you take out a loan from an institution, they put it in what's called an escrow account where you and they don't have access to it. And then when you finish paying off the loan, that's when you get the funds. Again, if the borrower does not repay, the lender hasn't lost any money. So that's why you can do them if you don't have any history. Yeah, the other ones are pretty self-explanatory. Only apply for loans you need. And I don't have this on here, but don't co-sign for a loan unless you are willing and able to take it on completely yourself. So co-signing for a loan is taking equal responsibility for the debt. So if you co-sign on a loan with your friend for a car and they total the car and have to get a new one, and they say, I can't keep paying 2 car payments, the car is like totaled anyway, I'm not going to pay on this loan, that is still on your credit report. And it will show up as, you know, delinquent and possibly as far as a, you know, collection, repossession. So that's really bad, and we don't want to get there. So it's fine to co-sign on loans with people who, you know, you might be sharing finances with. And so you think like, yeah, I could take on this loan for a little bit of time. That's fine. But just be, you know, careful. Okay, I'm gonna do a few more questions here. Do I need to keep a balance on my credit card? Will it improve my credit if I keep a balance on my credit card? No, correct. I think that this is my conspiracy theory, that big credit is telling us that we need to keep a balance so that they earn money. If you pay off your credit card every time you use it, or you pay it off in full every month, you're never charged interest. So it's great. If you keep balance, that's when you get charged interest. Yeah. Yeah.
Debit cards, famous credit cards, as far as bolstering your credit score?
No. So debit cards are hooked up to your checking account. And so they access money that you already have available. Credit cards allow you to borrow money that you do not have. So there are some newer account types where they're kind of a hybrid, where you put a deposit down, kind of like a secured credit card, you put a deposit down and you're using that and they're reporting it to the credit bureau as on-time payments, but that's not the normal way of things. So if I check my credit score or my credit report, will that hurt my credit score? No, correct. If you apply for a loan and the lender checks your credit report, then it will cause an impact. If you're checking it on your own, just to see what's going on, totally fine. Does the amount of savings I have impact my credit score? Yes, think. No, it does not. Lenders may look at your savings for other reasons. If you're getting a mortgage or something, to see that you can cover down payment, but it doesn't impact your credit score at all. And then if I've never taken out a loan, do I have good credit? We've covered this. Yeah, you don't. You have no credit. Okay, so the next part of borrowing money is paying it back, right? Oh, well, actually, this is just a quick thing about getting a good loan. So if you guys heard the term APR, it stands for annual percentage rate. And it is your interest rate and any fees, points, whatever else you pay on an annual basis. So it's represented as a percentage. You've probably heard, you know, in like a car commercial, they'll say, come in now, get 0% APR for the first 18 months if you sign up with Toyota, you know, whatever. Lower APR is great because it means you're spending less over time, right? Because interest is just money that is being spent for you to borrow money. So when you take out a loan, you have principal, which is the amount you borrow, and then you have the interest, which is how much you're spending to have that loan. You get a better interest rate by having a really good credit score, right? So you've shown that you know how to pay back a loan. You get a good interest rate by having a bigger down payment. You have more skin in the game at that point. You know, you're less likely to not pay your car loan if it's almost paid off. And then a shorter term. So this represents the length of time that you're paying back the loan. So usually terms are done in months. I'll use an example of car payment here, where we have 36 and 84 months. We have two examples here. So the one on the left two are someone with a good credit score. The one on the two on the right are someone with a poor credit score. I took these numbers from my credit union. So for someone who has a really good credit score, if they come in and they want a 36-month car loan for $2,000, it'll be about $580 a month. So you might say, I might say, that's kind of a lot. I don't know if I want to spend almost $600 a month on my car loan. And the lender can say, cool, we can pull the term out, take a little longer. You're only going to pay $300 a month. And that sounds great. But over the length of the loan, you end up paying a lot more money because the interest rate goes from 2.99 to 6.99. So instead of paying less than $1,000 in interest, you end up paying, you know, over $5,000. This isn't maybe too huge, too bad for myself. I might say 5,000 over 7 years is fine. But if you have a poor credit score and you're looking at these two columns, we're starting out with almost $630 a month, going down to $340, which seems affordable. But by the time those 7 years have passed and you've paid off the loan, you're paying almost $9,000, right? For originally borrowing $20,000. So that's almost 50%, right? So be really aware when you're taking out a loan, what the long-term costs are. And if the lender says something like, oh, we can just, pull out the term, we can just stretch it out, just know that like they're also making money on that too, right? So it's not always your best interest. This is some quick vocabulary, but I think this is all in your booklets. So I'm going to skip it and talk about student loans. So if you're planning on going to college, you'll probably take out student loans. There are private and federal student loans. Federal student loans are by far better. Federal student loans have options for forgiveness. They have more options for repayment. There is a grace period. You don't have to start paying until 6 months later, and you can get federal student loans without having any credit history, right? If you find that your federal student loans are not enough to cover your needs in college, you might end up taking out a private student loan. Private student loans are done through separate lenders, and everything about them is decided by the lender, right? So what the interest rate is, if you need a cosigner, if they'll allow you to defer, what your repayment options are, it's going to depend on that individual lender. So it's much less forgiving, usually. That said, within federal student loans, there's subsidized and unsubsidized. Just quickly, subsidized, the interest is paid for by the government. So if you take out a loan for $3,000 when you're a freshman, when you leave school, that loan is still $3,000. Unsubsidized student loans will gain interest that whole time that you have to pay off, and it is capitalized into the loan. So that $3,000 loan that you took out as a freshman is now, let's say, $3,600. And they're going to put the interest into the full loan amount. So they're going to say that instead of owing $3,000 in principal and $600 in interest, they're going to say you owe $3,600 in principal, which now gains interest more quickly. So if you are at all able to, while you are in school, just pay the interest on your unsubsidized student loans, it can have a huge long-term financial impact. But still, both of these have pretty low interest rates, yeah, but they do have a cap. Yes, 5 minutes, cool. Once you go to paying back your debt, there's a few different ways we can do it. Highest interest is the one that saves you the most amount of money. This is sometimes called the avalanche method. There are tons of calculators online where you can put in all of your debt information and it will tell you kind of what will save you the most money. But another way that people really like to do it is the smallest loan. This is called the snowball method. And it just like feels really nice psychologically to cross a debt off, and to know like, that's totally done. There's no fun name for paying off the biggest loan first. It does save you money, but I'm going to skip the numbers on this and just tell you that if you're buying a new computer, as someone mentioned before, and you go to Best Buy or something, and they say, would you like to finance your computer, your laptop with us? It's only $30 a month. What they're doing at that point is offering you a credit card with Best Buy, where you are paying the minimum, which is $30. If you are only paying the minimum, you are being charged more and more interest. So here's just an example of how like different amounts kind of vary for if you're paying the minimum, how much interest you'll end up paying. If you can make more than one payment on a minimum payment, it's better. If you can pay it fully, it's awesome. If you are having trouble paying off your loans, the first thing you need to do is contact your servicer. So whether this is a student loan and you're 6 months out of college and you haven't found the income that you need to start paying your student loans back, and you contact them and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. or it's a car loan and maybe you get sick and you can't work for a few weeks. Whatever it is, there's a lot more flexibility if you talk to your servicer and explain what's going on. Because if they don't know what's going on, they're going to assume the worst, right? That you're not planning on paying. But if you contact them, there are lots of programs that can assist you. You will have a lot of advertising about consolidating your loans. For most people, when they leave college, they have a loan for every semester or a couple loans for every semester. So you have a lot, right? And consolidation companies will say you can consolidate them, make it one easy payment. Consolidating takes all of your debt, pays it off, and instead you have just one loan that you're paying. However, that means that your interest rate is now changed to whatever that consolidated loan is. So personally, when I was in school, I had loans that were 3.5 and 6.5% with student loans. And when I graduated, the consolidated rate that they were going to give me was like 5%. And if I looked at how many I had of each, that was actually higher than I was already paying. So consolidating, you're going to get a lot of mail about it. It's not always the best option. I'm going to give us a second for questions. And yeah, we're going to skip our little, well, I'll tell you a little bit. Pay your loans. If you don't pay your loans, you'll be charged a late fee, usually after 15 days. If it goes more than 30 days delinquent, which means late, you will be reported to the credit bureau. It hurts your credit report. If it goes more than that, it can be charged off, which means the company says, we're closing this loan. It can go to collections, which means that the company has said, we are closing this loan and we're making someone else deal with getting the money from them. This is really bad for your credit report. If it is a secure loan, which means that there was collateral on the line, like a car or a house, they can repossess or foreclose or evict you, right? Because when you take out a loan for something like a car, the car is owned by the lender until you finish paying it off. At the worst, this can go to legal action, which is where a borrower has borrowed money that they have not repaid, and the lender is suing them for that debt that they legally agreed to pay. Bankruptcy is not that bad. Bankruptcy is a clean slate where you go through the court system with a lawyer and your assets. So if you have stocks, if you have multiple cars, multiple houses, real estate, those will be sold to pay off your debt, and whatever debt is not sold is discharged. So yeah, very fast. Any questions? Anything you guys really enjoyed or want to know more about? Or do we need to get going to our next one? Or do we have questions online? Okay. No, I was speedy. Oh yeah, and if you, so part of my like one-on-one counseling, you can just make appointments on our website. You can also scan the QR code on the front of that little booklet. And my parting advice is just like pay attention to your finances and what's going on. The worst thing you can do is like not look at them and just like hide it because it's too stressful. Because that's how you can really get into situations that are hard down the line. But everything you can come back from anything, really. So yeah, it shouldn't be a stressor in your life. Cool. Yeah, thank you guys all for coming. Yeah, and if you have questions, just let me know. Cool. Oh, we have one. Great. Yeah.
Where do you go to find subsidized loans for college?
So it's part of your financial aid package from FAFSA. Yeah. So yeah. Cool. You do have a question? Sorry. Okay. Okay, great. Anyone want to share anything that they thought was really cool, or some financial maybe tips and tricks from the parents who have advice that they want to tell their children or others? I'll stop putting you guys on the spot. Thank you for coming. I'm gonna turn this off now.